Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
Imam Muhammad ibn Ali, also known as Baqir or Abu Ja'far, was born on the first of the month of Rajab in the year 57 Hijri in Medina. He was the oldest son of Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. His mother was Fatima, the daughter of Imam Hassan alayhi salam. She was unique in piety among the children of Imam Hassan. Thus, Imam Baqir became the only Imam whose maternal and paternal grandfathers were Imams. All of the next Imams from his lineage are related to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, through both Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Imam Baqir was about 3.5 years old on the day of Ashura. He was the only child of Imam Sajjad who was present in Kerbala. He was among the captives who were sent to Kufa and from there to Damascus, to Yazid's palace. Jabir ibn Abdullah was a close companion of Prophet Muhammad. The Prophet had said to him that, "O Jabir, you will have a lengthy life and will meet someone from my progeny and from the children of Imam Hussein, whose name will be my name, Muhammad." The Prophet had said that he would be called Baqir, the one who splits open the doors of knowledge. The Prophet had asked Jabir to pass his greetings to him upon their meeting. After many years, Jabir met Imam Baqir in Medina while Imam was young. There are historical records to prove that Imam was responding to various questions raised by the Muslims while he was still young. Imam was raised under the supervision of his father, Imam Sajjad. The well-known book, Sahih Sajjadiyya, was recorded when Imam Sajjad was narrating it to his sons Imam Baqir and Zayd. When Imam Sajjad was poisoned, he called his children near him and chose his son Muhammad as his successor. Imam Sajjad gave Imam Baqir a heavy chest full of holy books and scriptures, as well as the swords of the Prophet and Imam Ali, which was passed down through the Imams. When Imam Sajjad was in his deathbed, someone visited him and asked him about whom he should refer to after him. Imam told him to refer to his son Muhammad. That person inquired if Muhammad was chosen due to his age, and Imam Sajjad responded that Imamat is not by age, but is appointed by God. Imam Sajjad said that I have found Imam Baqir's name as the successor of Imamat in the Holy Scripture that has been passed down to me from the Prophet. Waleed was a merciless, cruel governor who ordered the poisoning and martyrdom of Imam Sajjad. In his first sermon as Caliph, he told the people that whoever stands against me would be beheaded, and whoever keeps silent, obeys my orders, would die a natural death. The majority of his government was spent in military campaigns and the expansion of his territory in Northern Africa, India, Central Asia, and Andalusia in Europe. The tragedy of Kerbala had caused separation between the religious and political leadership among the Muslims. Thus, at this time, Caliphate was just an authoritarian monarchy that was passed down in Banu Marwan's family, who were from the Umayyads. The Muslims' Caliph had absolute power and did not hold himself accountable to anyone, even God. Imam was the only source of the true Islamic teachings in the society and practically portrayed it by his behavior and interactions with the people. Once, a Christian called Imam Baqir Baqara, which in Arabic means a cow. He then continued by insulting Imam's mother. Imam treated him with patience and responded to him politely by saying that if your statement is right, may God forgive my mother, and if you are wrong, may God forgive you. Imam's treatment and greatness had such an impact on that person that he chose to convert to Islam. After a year into the imamat of Imam Baqir, Waleed passed away, and his brother Sulayman assumed power. Waleed initially wanted to nominate his son as his successor but passed away before implementing his decision. Sulayman inherited the power of an expanded Islamic territory from Andalusia in Europe and Northern Africa to Central Asia and India. Sulayman was a corrupt pleasure seeker who had kept himself busy with womanizing and other sinful behavior. Him and his governors were very cruel to the people and pressured them by collecting high taxes. However, The short government of Sulayman for about 3 years and his engagement in opposing Waleed's governors who were initially against his nomination for government provided an opportunity for Imam to spread his knowledge with more freedom. The time of Imam Baqir coincided with the appearance of various theological beliefs among the Muslims, which is attributed to multiple factors. After a long period of civil unrest that was initiated after the tragedy of Kerbala, the Banu Marwan's government became stable, and the Islamic scholars finally had a chance to get involved in education rather than political disputes. Various Islamic scholars and jurisprudence with different opinions about the Islamic laws emerged. Schools and educational facilities were established in the big cities, and the educated people were more accepting to the intellectual and theological thoughts as compared to before. Furthermore, due to military campaigns and the expansion of the Islamic territory, Muslims were exposed to various theological beliefs from the other civilizations, and had to find persuasive answers for the questions raised by the new Muslims or the followers of other faiths. However, there was turmoil among the Muslims about the true Islamic teachings of the Prophet due to a gap of about a century from the Prophet's demise. In addition, all of the people who had witnessed the Prophet and could testify on his teachings had also passed away by this time. The ban on the Prophet's narrations, which was in effect shortly after his demise, also worsened the situation. Thus, the Muslims were split in the theological beliefs that were even contradictory to each other. Khawarij was one of these false theologies who believed that a person who has committed a major sin is an unbeliever and out of the religion. They regarded Imam Ali and some of the other caliphs as unbelievers and were in continuous dispute with the government. On the contrary, Murjia was a group who believed that one should not condemn the actions of any person alive or deceased and should leave all judgment to God for the hereafter. This indifference was clearly against the teachings of the Prophet and his command on enjoining the good and forbidding the evil. This theology was strongly supported by Banu Marwan's government, since their injustice and oppression was not held accountable. Jabriya was another theological belief at the time. They believed that everything occurs according to God's will, and people should accept this enforced reality and should not object to it. Thus, as consequence of this theology, no one was allowed to object to the government's actions. On the contrary, there was another group called Qadariya who had considered full freedom for the human actions. Imam strongly confronted these false theologies and demonstrated the reality for the Muslims. Many of Imam's debates with the leaders of these theological groups are narrated in history. Imam used logical arguments using the Holy Quran and the Prophet's tradition to falsify their arguments. Imam also confronted Ghulat, or the people who would exaggerate the status of the Ahlul Bayt and would regard them at the level of God. Imam publicly rejected and cursed their leaders for giving a wrong attribute to the Ahlul Bayt. The Imam also challenged the thoughts of the Israelites that had entered and blended with the Islamic beliefs. These thoughts portrayed a distorted and corrupt image of the biblical and Quranic prophets. When Sulayman was in his deathbed, he made a sudden decision to nominate his cousin Umar ibn Abdul Aziz to take his position instead of his brother Yazid, and appointed his brother as the successor of his cousin. Umar had a fair ruling strategy as compared to the other Umayyad governors. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz had respect for Imam and was interested in seeking his advice. Imam in return provided him with advice and guidance for the benefit of the Muslims. However, Imam never endorsed his government nor any other Umayyads. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz in his short government performed a series of unprecedented actions that were beneficial to the people and the Ahlul Bayt. He confiscated unlawful wealth that was taken by the Umayyads and returned it to the Bayt al-Mal. When collecting taxes, he was lenient and showed kindness to both Muslims and non-Muslims. He had also asked his governor in Medina to distribute considerable funds among the children of Imam Ali and the lady Fatima, as they had been stripped from their rights for a long period of time. He also returned the land of Fadak to Imam Baqir and stopped the cursing of Imam Ali from the pulpits. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz also removed the ban of narrating the traditions of the Prophet. This ban was placed by the first caliph shortly after the Prophet's demise, with the justification that this would divide the Muslims, and had said that Quran is sufficient. This ban was strictly continued by the second and the third caliph and the Umayyad rulers until the time of Umar. Umar, who feared the loss of the Prophet's traditions, with the passing of time ordered for the collection of the narrations. As a result of the narrations ban for around 90 years after the Prophet's demise, Muslims didn't know much about the true Islam that was practiced by the Prophet. Over this long period, many forged narrations were propagated among the Muslims by the rulers for their own political interests. Thus, authentic narrations from the Prophet were mixed with the forged narrations, and it was very hard even for the Islamic scholars to distinguish between them. For example, in the years later, Bukhari collected 600,000 narrations and only authenticated around 7,000 of them, which were published in his Sahih al-Bukhari book. Similarly, Abi Dawood selected around 5,000 narrations that he felt were authentic in his Sunan book, among a total of 500,000 collected narrations. Both books are regarded as core narration books among the Sunni schools of thought. In this situation, Imam's divine knowledge was recognized by everyone. Imam had the most freedom for his scientific activities and spreading of his knowledge during Umar's government. He used this opportunity to establish himself as the main source for the true Islamic teachings in the society. His life was full of puzzling questions raised by the people to test his knowledge. His answers to these questions proved his knowledge for the people. He also availed every opportunity to debate with various so-called Islamic scholars who were falsely interpreting the Quran or propagating forged narrations. Imam was the most authentic narrator of the traditions of the Prophet and the best interpreter of the Holy Quran. Imam used to narrate the authentic narrations from the Prophet and his forefathers. He had mentioned his forefathers as the chain of reference for his narrations from the Prophet. The number of narrations cited from Imam Baqir is in the thousands and is the highest among the 12 Imams after his son Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. On the night when Umar passed away in Syria, Imam, while in Medina and far from him, said that someone has passed away tonight whom the residents of the earth cry for, yet the angels in heaven curse. It is said that Umayyads who were against Umar's ruling strategy poisoned and eliminated him. After Umar, Yazid ibn Abdul Malik or Yazid II assumed power and ruled for 4 years. He initially continued Umar ibn Abdul Aziz's ruling strategies for a short period. However, the Umayyads convinced him to change his ruling approach. Yazid ibn Abdul Malik, similar to Yazid ibn Muawiyah, drank alcohol, womanized, and indulged in other sinful behavior. He also had a wine pool to swim in while womanizing. He had 2 slave lovemates that had overpowered his mind and their love. One day, he was spending the time with one of his lovemates, and she coincidentally died by choking. Yazid didn't leave her body for 3 days, and the grief he felt from her passing led to his death in a few days. Today, Imam is also known as the founder of Fiqh, or Islamic jurisprudence in the Shia school of thought. Fiqh is the knowledge about the Islamic laws according to the Quran and the teachings and practices of the Prophet. Imam not only responded to the thousands of fiqh questions raised by Muslims during his life, but also established the principles that are used in fiqh to derive the Islamic laws known as the usul al-fiqh. These principles are used until today by the scholars to derive the Islamic laws for the newly emerged questions. Furthermore, there are many narrations available from Imam on other Islamic sciences. Imam established an Islamic university to benefit hundreds of students who were interested in learning Islamic studies. The name of more than 460 of Imam's students are recorded in history. It is said that no one would visit Medina without attending Imam's lectures to benefit from his knowledge. Many of the Islamic scholars would sit by Imam humbly to learn from his knowledge, similar to a child sitting in the presence of an honorable teacher. Many of the people who had benefited from Imam's knowledge were non-Shias, such as Abu Hanifa, the founder of the Hanafi school of thought. These students then traveled all over the Islamic territory and played a key role in propagating the Islamic teachings and familiarizing the Muslims with the Imam. As a result, Khurasan provided the grounds for the followers of the Ahlul Bayt after Kufa. It became the center for the emergence of the Abbasids and the extinction of the Umayyads in the upcoming years. After Yazid, his brother Hisham assumed power. He ruled for around 20 years and was the last powerful ruler of the Umayyads before their extinction. He was very precise and would personally supervise work-related affairs. However, he was very stingy, jealous, cruel, and heartless. He was the one who began hating Imam Sajjad ever since he saw the people respecting the Imam around the Kaaba during the Hajj season, while they were completely indifferent to him. His hatred and conspiracy encouraged his brother Waleed to order for the poisoning and martyrdom of Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. One year, Hisham went to Mecca for Hajj and saw Muslims gather around Imam Baqir in large crowds to ask him their questions. Hisham was also informed by his brother that Imam Baqir's son, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, has delivered a powerful speech for the pilgrims about the honor and divine status of the Ahlul Bayt. Thus, Hisham decided to humiliate Imam Baqir. He sent one of the scholars of the time to ask Imam some difficult questions. However, Imam was able to respond to all of the questions. The scholar returned to Hisham admitting Imam's knowledge. Hisham was very angry with the outcome, but decided not to confront the Imam during Hajj. However, right after Hajj, he summoned Imam and his son Imam Sadiq to his palace in Damascus to intimidate them. When Imam arrived in Damascus, Hisham did not allow him to enter his palace for 3 days. On the 4th day, he accepted Imam into his palace, where he had arranged for an archery exercise to humiliate Imam. Hisham had assumed that Imam was only a scholar and would not have any military skill. He insisted that the Imam participate in the archery, but the Imam was hesitant. Finally, Imam accepted his challenge and threw an arrow which landed exactly on the target. Imam then continued his archery and threw a total of 9 arrows, where each arrow landed on the tail of the previously landed arrow on the target. Hisham, who was shocked by Imam's skill, confessed that Imam was the best archer he had ever witnessed. Although Imam Baqir was pursuing a peaceful confrontation with the government, Hisham had hatred towards Imam and feared his social popularity as the most knowledgeable person in the society. Furthermore, the events that occurred during Imam's visit to Damascus were also influential in Hisham's decision to martyr the Imam. These events included Imam's archery skills, his debate with Hisham leading to Hisham's humiliation, and his debate with the Christian leader which spread Imam's name among the Syrians. Thus, Ibrahim ibn Waleed, Hisham's nephew and the governor of Medina, poisoned Imam by Hisham's orders. There is historical evidence suggesting that Imam might have been poisoned multiple times by the Umayyad rulers, but God had saved him. As a result of the poisoning, Imam became very sick. He informed everyone that he would not make it to the following day. When Imam was in his deathbed, he made a will to his son Imam Sadiq to spend a part of his wealth to hold a mourning service in Mina during Hajj season for 10 years to remind people about the oppression against him from the government. Imam Baqir also asked Imam Sadiq to bring some of the elders of Medina as witnesses for his will. In his will, he asked Imam Sadiq to take care of his burial, and requested him to follow specific guidance for his shroud and tomb. Later, Imam Sadiq asked his father about the reason for having witnesses for such simple requests. Imam Baqir replied that he wanted people to realize that Imam Sadiq is his rightful successor and the next Imam, to avoid any doubt after him. Imam Baqir's soul ascended and he passed away on the 7th of Dhul Hijjah in the year of 114th Hijri at the age of 57. Imam Sadiq took care of his father's funeral and was followed by crowds of grieving Muslims. Imam Baqir was buried at the cemetery of Baqir, next to the graves of his father Imam Sajjad and his great uncle Imam Hassan.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد